Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. It's a Rolex. Can it be saved? Spoiler alert, of course it can. Let's get on with it. And while we're restoring this old trooper, we'll find out why Rolexes are absolutely the best watches in the history of the world ever. Let's go! This watch's owner was concerned that winding and time setting was very stiff. Also, when checked on the time grapher, it was running around 25 seconds a day fast and had a low amplitude. Unacceptable in all departments. Hands off and let's get the dial safely out of the way. The craft that's gone into the surface of this dial is amazing. On first inspection, we are very disappointed. Watchmakers are exactly the same as military special forces. Our prime mission is to go in, do the job and get out, leaving no signs we were ever there. But whoever worked on this watch left lots and lots of signs and lubricant sloshing around like it doesn't cost £35,000 a pint. There's a reward to anyone in the comments who can think of a fluid more costly than watch oil. No need to panic, it's just the oscillating weight pinion. They often drop off when lifting out the automatic works. Let's get over to the keyless, motion and date works. The date function on Rolex watches are one of the elements that set them apart. A correctly adjusted Rolex has the date change instantly snap forward within a few seconds of midnight. We'll see at the end how well we did. We'll remove the date indicator seating to get access to the rest of the date, motion and keyless works bits and bobs. We work on all sorts of watches, everything from 100-year-old pocket watches to replacing batteries in new quartz movements. Working on a Rolex movement is like taking a little holiday. The watches were not only designed for robust accuracy, they were designed to be serviced. And that is important. Apart from dropping a watch 100 meters into a field, servicing can be one of the biggest stresses on the movement, particularly if poor design or manufacturing tolerances make that work awkward to complete. Unfortunately, the Swiss watch industry is not only restricting access to parts, it has now started adding non-serviceable parts into movement. Turning what should be a solid tool watch into a machine with components that have to be replaced at every service. An absolute bloody outrage that goes against 400 years of horological progress. Come the revolution, brothers and sisters. Everyone will have access to all the Rolex parts they need. I feel better for getting that out of my system. We've removed the date jumper, date corrector wheel, and now we are having a go at the setting lever spring. Even though we know that these two screws should be the same, it's still worth checking during disassembly. I mentioned the first rule of watchmaking earlier. The second rule is to not assume what you find in the watch is correct. Screws often get swapped around or replaced by previous visitors to the movement. Yoke spring didn't put up a fight and the yoke lifts out easily. The clutch and winding pinion may now vacate the area. We need to check what this part is called on the Rolex parts list. There's already a part called setting lever spring. So they named this the spring for setting lever. And this is the setting lever. Sometimes I pronounce it lever to make our American cousins feel more at home. This screw on the date wheel is often mangled because some so-called watchmakers didn't take the 2 minutes needed to modify a screwdriver blade for the job. We'll replace this one with a new part. Now we'll hold the tension on the date calm yoke. This yoke has one of the strongest springs to be found in any watch pushing against it. Along with the ridiculously powerful spring, this jewel on the date calm yoke is the secret sauce that gives the Rolex date change its instant snap. We'll remove the hour wheel, minute wheel, and cannon pinion while we get ourselves into the right frame of mind to deal with the spring for the calm yoke. Clear. Shall we take a look at the other side? Getting into the habit of removing the pallet first is a good safety net, just in case one forgot to let down the mainspring, which we never ever have done ever. Tiny bit of power left is released now. Train of wheels bridge. One of the benefits of the watch being made to exact tolerances is parts don't need to be levered off or levered off. A joy to work on. Third wheel off first, then the fourth wheel, and now the second wheel. Actually on checking Rolex call the second wheel the great wheel and the fourth wheel the second wheel. At least everyone agrees the third wheel is called the third wheel. Anyway, that's the escape wheel away from the movement too. Next up, we'll have a go at the barrel bridge assembly. The delightfully named wig-wag pinion has reached the top of the list. Wig-wag pinions are used as a switch in gear trains. In this case, it disconnects the crown wheel from the ratchet wheel when the watch is being wound by the automatic works. Crown wheel with its reverse threaded screw is away too. While we continue the disassembly of this watch, let's talk about Rolex. It really is impossible to say anything about Rolex that's not been said before. A watch brand with a history that goes back further than Nicki Minaj's booty and is more iconic than a Frenchman's shrug. Founded in 1905 by Hans Wilsdorf, this watchmaker emerged not from the hallowed halls of Swiss tradition, but from the bustling streets of London, a city where the fog swirls as mysteriously as the ambitions of men. Wilsdorf had the great good fortune of focusing on the burgeoning wristwatch market just as the First World War started. Robust, accurate wristwatches were extremely popular with the troops, as nobody wants to commence the charge towards a machine gun nest later, or even worse, earlier than everybody else. Rolex introduced the first waterproof wristwatch, the Oyster, in 1926. This marvel of ingenuity could plunge into the depths of the sea and emerge unscathed. This innovation graced the wrist of Mercedes Gleitz during her historic swim across the English Channel, an endorsement as splendid as any modern-day influencer could summon. In 1945, the Datejust made its debut, the first watch to automatically change the date on its dial. The popularity of Rolex expanded, adorning the wrists of explorers, divers, soldiers, sailors, and red-faced businessmen in every golf club bar. In recent years, a combination of hypermarketing and some, quite frankly, appalling social media influencers have changed the perception of the brand. But the watches behind this nonsense have largely stuck to the same conservative designs. Right? Where are we with the disassembly? The core movement is done, the automatics work still need doing. The automatic works, like the rest of the movement, continue the theme of simple robustness. Now that we've nearly completed the disassembly, did you notice the missing part? There was one part found to be missing during the disassembly. I'm not going to say what it was, but we'll confirm a right answer in the comments. Everything will be going through the cleaning process now. Manual cleaning first, polishing pivots, then through the cleaning machine and epilum treatment for escape wheel, pallet jewels, cap jewels, and the automatic works reverser wheels. It's assembly time. We'll be installing a new mainspring as part of the service. It's a false economy to reuse mainsprings, unless one is working on hobby watches, in which case it's very sensible. Braking grease is applied to the outside of the barrel. This allows the mainspring to slip in controlled small amounts once it's fully wound and can't hold any more power. Some people go for slathering the barrel with great globs of the stuff. We prefer a more measured approach. The new spring is plopped into place now. We take great care, as there's more energy in a coiled mainspring than an angry Scotsman. It's very easy to muck this up rather than randomly pushing down and hoping for the best. We focus on the outside loop. And there we go. Disaster averted. The arbor can be wrestled into place now, and a small portion of oil where it engages the barrel lid. I'm not showing every step of the assembly and lubrication, so please don't use this video as a guide. Check the feel of the arbor in the barrel. Nice, tiny amount of movement, but enough. Dipping the balance wheel cap jewels in epilum, then it's 90-10 with a small oiler. The epilum helps hold the oil in the middle of the jewel where we want it to stay. It's helpful, but not essential. Now we expertly plonk the chaton onto the jewel, ready and plonk. Or we could just half-force it like that. The epilum really helps here, stopping the oil smearing over the jewel and chaton. Turn them over and there's the nice central circle of oil, good for a few billion oscillations of the balance wheel. When narrating these videos, one does start to run out of new ways to say putting a part back into the movement. So we shall go with let's get these puppies back into the kennel. The balance wheel is off again and escorted to its place of safety. And the lower cap jewel is back where it belongs. The escape wheel is the first part of the gear train to be returned. And a little lubrication for the minute pinion. This movement has two separate gear trains running from the mainspring barrel. The minute pinion drives the minute and hour hands, while the great wheel drives the train of wheels, including the movement of the second hand and powering the balance. Here's the great wheel plopped into place. A smidgen of 90-10 on the second-hand pinion, and that can be deposited into the movement too. Bit shaky. Definitely time to top up on tea and crumpets. And finally the third wheel, and we can get the train of wheels bridge into place. When one is starting out one's watchmaking journey, it can be disheartening to see YouTubers' magical ability to get a train wheels bridge into place. No doubt there's some sneaky editing, but also higher quality movements tend to drop into place much easier than cheap ones. So when you're working on your first cheap movements, keep your chin up and battle through, with the knowledge that you're completing the much more difficult job. Not too much oil, not too little oil. Barrel with its new mainspring is in, closely followed by the barrel bridge. Oil on the bearing surfaces. Then the intermediate wheel and wig-wag pinion. We put small dots of grease on the bridge to assist the pinion in its wigging, and indeed its wagging. Friction spring for the crown wheel is greased, and the crown wheel follows into place. The click must be so jealous of the wig-wag pinion. You're the bit that clicks, so we'll call you the click. Can't I be called the mainspring police or ratchet manager? Nope, you're the click. Ratchet wheel needs to be aligned with its square axle while mating with the click and the wig-wag pinion. That's the last time we need to mention the wig-wag pinion, which is a shame. That's the core of the movement done. We can get the pallet fork in. We shall put some power into the mainspring with the ratchet manager, stopping the ratchet wheel turning the wrong way. The pallet fork is getting very healthy kicks from the escape wheel, looking good. Time to lubricate the pallet jewels with 9415. It is a non-Newtonian fluid, meaning that its viscosity changes in response to the application of pressure. Thick and immobile when left alone, thin and runny when hit by the escape wheel teeth. Right, we're over to the keyless, motion, and date works. Let's use capillary action to get the oil to where it's needed on the lower barrel arbor pivot. Then we'll start on the keyless works with the winding pinion. And now the extravagantly toothed sliding pinion. We won't put any grease on the stem yet. It's going to be in and out a few times before we're finished. The balance stop lever is in. It gently touches the balance when the watch is in hand setting mode, stopping the seconds hand. Button type setting lever. The spring for setting lever will hold the stem in position now. So much easier and robust than the more common setting lever screw. Everything is ready for the yoke. In you plop, thank you. Some grease and then it's time for the remarkably compliant yoke spring. Intermediate wheel, then cannon pinion, then minute wheel. Setting lever spring is followed by more grease. Quick check of the keyless function, then it's onto the date corrector and more grease. Always more grease. As we are sure you remember, this is the yoke for the date cam. It pushes against the date cam with a huge force that helps produce the snappiest date change in the business. To offset the friction generated by the pressure, it's tipped with this jewel. The frankly terrifying cam yoke spring is negotiated into position. The date indicator seating and its 3 screws are taking us ever closer to completion. Our wheel sits astride the cannon pinion, and the date wheel is held in place with the new reverse-threaded nut. The date jumper's job is to make sure the date is correctly aligned in the little window. And finally, the date ring completes this side of the watch. Over to the other side to fit the balance. The narrative arc of a watchmaking video mandates we show this at the end, but in reality we put the balance in before oiling the pallet jewels to test the work completed so far and to clear the effluent from the working surfaces. Let's not forget the automatic works. Migration of oil is bad news for automatic works, so pretty much everything is treated with epilam and there's light lubrication of the pivots only. The watch has been cased and is looking good. After regulation, it will be tested for around 7 days, checking power reserve, automatic winding efficiency, and, of course, timekeeping. Let's see how we did with the date changeover. Watch closely now, and 3, 2, 1, snap. If you have a watch that needs servicing, repairing or restoring, check out the Gentleman's Watch Services website linked in this video's description. We'll give your watch a huge hug and make everything better. Timekeeping and amplitude are looking good, and putting the watch into a vertical position will show how a free-sprung balance comes into its own. Excellent. That's it for this one. Have a marvelous day in all departments.